So props to those who attended on time. Thank you so much for being on time, and advance apologies if you would hear dogs barking, motorcycle passing by, or even someone shouting taho, because those are my current environment right now. So please do tell if you can see my screen. The first word that you would see there would be no. Yes, good afternoon. Okay, so can you see my screen? Thank you so much for that. Yes, no. So we will begin with entrepreneurial traits. As I've said earlier, this will not be new, especially for those who are already serial entrepreneurs in the group or who have created their businesses before. So this will just be a sort of a rehash and a recap, and simply to add what would be the traits that would be deemed viable, feasible, and must have for every entrepreneur. This content is a mix of modules from our University Center for Entrepreneurship Education and UC Berkeley's Storja Institute. So this will be a mix from those two resources. For entrepreneurial traits, okay, so let us give a moment to read the comic that you see in your screen. So we have two people there talking, and the bald one is saying, I'm thinking of quitting and becoming an entrepreneur. I want to experience life on the edge, full of risk and challenge and adventure. And the other one remarks, the company stops paying you if you quit. And he replied, oh then, never mind. So I guess he wants to be an entrepreneur. However, the safety of having that constant or regular salary resource is something he is not ready yet. So he forgoes his idea of becoming a businessman. Now, this comic strip, although very short and simple, will actually tell us what are the things and idea and traits that an entrepreneur must have. So we will be explaining that in the next succeeding slides. So for behavioral patterns for entrepreneur, one trait that is a must-have or good to have is an entrepreneur that pays it forward, meaning to say it is in your heart that sooner or later, should you succeed in your startup journey, you will agree that you will get help from others and you will pay it forward. This is the kind of structure that made Silicon Valley the kind of place where startups thrive. Simply because the people, the companies that have bloomed, blossomed, that have succeeded there tend to pay it forward by looking for new startups they can support, be it in terms of mentorship, giving them seed money, helping them in any way they can. And that is why Silicon Valley is really the place for startups, because many people have succeeded there. So this time they want the new breed of startup and generations to be as successful as them. They are doing this pay it forward method. Furthermore, okay, this is just an excerpt from the Storja Center. Pay it forward is a term used to describe the concept of asking the beneficiary of a good deed to repay it to others. Furthermore, some of these mentors that mentors the new startups or gives them money, they don't ask anything in return. Instead, they would want that the startups they are teaching will also do the same in the near future. Second trait of a good entrepreneur is storytelling. These entrepreneurs are very good in communicating their product, no matter how technical their startup or their products are. Realize something new by induction and then learn to communicate the story with a new language. This is supported by this literature in a way that normally when you are a technical startup, there is that dilemma that you can't relay best how to describe your product or your startup. But in order for your consumers to better understand your product, you need to be able to add in value by by giving the story via narrative or storytelling. As such, it is very important then that you will also get to relay that in not only to the people inside your company, your employees, your co-founders, but also your identified consumers as well. You must be able to articulate what your product is, forgo the jargons, and you need to make sure that they will also be able to understand exactly what you are talking about. And a good startup or a good entrepreneur that can be able to do just that will surely have that critical edge to move their startup forward. Another trait is the friend or foe. Even if you can tell, learn to trust others without expecting anything in return. This might be something a little risky, especially since you are onboarding a lot of people, perhaps, as part of your co-founders and the like. But at least you need to have that grain of faith that you need to trust your idea with someone, and you need to be able to depend as well to others, especially if you're asking for help. If you look at this literature that is in box, generalized trust is trust towards strangers arising when a community shares a set of moral values in such a way as to create regular expectations of regular and honest behavior. So I know that some might have fears in trusting others, especially if you are dealing with a co-founder. No wonder some startups would just be a one-man army, but please don't do that. Learn how you can be able to trust and also depend others. Another behavioral pattern for entrepreneur is seeking fairness, meaning to say you make deals that seek fairness in positive sum transactions and not to have advantage. A literature that supports that is what we call as the abundance mindset, in which a person believes that there are indeed enough resources and successes to share with others. So, good example, some startups would like to join every possible startup challenge because they think that they can be able to win. Yes, that would be good, but please make sure that you are not just using those platforms in order to gain more money or whatnot, but you also need to handpick those startup challenges that would best fit into your startup. A good example for that is we have a friend, CDO b.i.t.e.s friend, Ryan Gersava of Virtualahan. Virtualahan is an online platform that seeks to empower disabled individuals by teaching them online related tasks and skills. It is really a good social business, social entrepreneurship. There was even a time that startup challenges are the ones emailing him so that he would join the said contest. But he told us that that was okay before when they were starting out, but at this point in time, they tend to forgo those startup challenges simply because there are already people, disabled individuals that depend on their startup already. Because if they join startup competitions, they tend to take a leave for X number of days from the startup and focus on the competition, and that is something they don't like to do as of the moment. So you need to so why not share instead that startup competition that you saw online to others who would best benefit it rather than you and your startup joining it. A good entrepreneur also plans to fail. According to this one, it is necessary to be wrong sometimes. You need to experiment, plan to fail, but also fail fast. But in that failure, analyze. Why did you fail in the first place? What were the things that were lacking? How can you improve? What should be done better? Adapt from it and then repeat the process and see if it will now be in a different outcome. Should doing this yield something different? Because the smarter you think you are, the harder this is going to be. The failure-savvy leadership rule, according to this book, the best failure to learn is from somebody else's, like by watching them. Another rule is the next best is to learn from what we call a simulated reality, like games or analysis. And another rule is to learn by doing it. You test it first and you prepare to be wrong. And should you be wrong, do not be hard on yourself. No wonder most startups tend to couple with mentors because the mentors are the ones sharing their failures in the past and the things they did, and those words of wisdom will be best implemented in your startup so you won't experience the same. Okay, so this is now a literature that supports it. Should there be failures, the most common thing a startup can do is to accept it and what we call as pivoting. A good example that we can share to you is this startup named Bourbon. Before, this is an iPhone app that enables users to check in, make plans for future check-ins, but these are the feedback from their customers. The features are good, but they are not great, so they're not sold to it, and no one is using it except for this particular feature, the photo sharing one. So people are just posting and sharing photos like crazy. With that being said, Bourbon, as a startup, realized that, hey, more and more people are just here in our platform just to share photos. So why won't we take advantage of that feature? And they became Instagram. So with that being said, their solution was simply to develop an easy-to-use app that would simply enable a user to do just 3 clicks in order to share photos with filters. So how were they able to pivot from Bourbon to Instagram? They learned by simply listening to their customers, and with that simple pivot, they relaunched their product and sold to Facebook for over $1 billion. Another thing that an entrepreneur must possess is having this diversity in terms of network. You need to connect to more people that you would normally meet. Go and listen and open up and share your story, share your startup, share yourself as an entrepreneur. Majority of the startup competitions that we see right now, they are not really anchored towards the product, but rather who's the person that runs the startup. A good example is Ideation. They normally bank on the personality of the person, how amicable that entrepreneur, how adaptable that person is, and given that, you should be able to have your leverage in terms of network. So a good example is you are part of CDO b.i.t.e.s right now. This is already a good avenue for you to meet other startups, to meet other founders, and to meet other people who might help your startup or who might help yourself in a way or another. And it already is a good step in diversifying your network. According to Dubiini and Aldrich, the diversity of entrepreneur networks is actually crucial towards opportunities opening for them. So if you are an entrepreneur that tends to be shy, then by all means be open. You need to know, you need to be able to introduce yourself without someone pushing you, without a wingman perhaps. You need to be able to have that initiative to talk to others openly and further reach your network further. Another thing is this one, perfection versus good enough. According to this one, perfection is no good, but good enough is perfect. So according to Reed, starting a company is like throwing yourself off the cliff and assembling the airplane on the way down. That might sound really scary, if most especially if you're jumping on a cliff, but please don't do that. But really, you don't even see what's down there when you start a business, like how the customers will react. But at least you know deep inside you, you can be able to work your way as you go forward. We programmers, a very good example, we don't tend to release a software unless it's 100% perfect. But needless to say, you need to be able to do a soft launch in order to realize if your program is, if your system or software is feasible to others or acceptable to others, and get feedback from there. Learn how you can be able to iterate. Learn how you can be able to add the features needed. And from there, improve on your startup or your product. As an entrepreneur, it is important to understand that this word, perfection, can be harmful, not because of the perfect result, but perfection requires time, and timing can be more important than the perfect result. So that is like a mishap of some startup founders, like they tend to need more time because they want to create an almost perfect product. But after X number of weeks or months, they will see another startup that has the same solution as them. But that startup already has launched in the market, and well, they are left on the crumbs of that startup because they waited for that time in order to make everything perfect according to their standards. Furthermore, it is also important for entrepreneurs to collaborate. Individual versus team and competitor versus partner. So please do make sure that apart from you, you are not a one-man army. Please make sure that you can be able to look for someone or some people whom you can be able to work as a team and collaborate from there. It is imperative that between individuals, collaboration is key in order for that successful launch of the venture. Furthermore, an entrepreneur should believe that you can change the world. This might be like a shoot in the moon, but if you have that certain belief that you can be able to change the world, good example is this cat looking to the mirror and looking that the cat is a lion, and that is something that will really make a huge difference in terms of the mindset of the entrepreneur. In this concept, belief is what they call a self-efficacy. In psychology, this is where our motivation will stem in. So you don't need to have extrinsic or outside factors to be motivated. You as an entrepreneur must have that heart, must have the truth to be motivated in the first place. You don't need someone, you don't need money to be motivated, but rather it is suited within yourself that you are motivated to pursue this business. Be a role model for other entrepreneurs and innovators. This is very much similar to the Pay It Forward that was discussed earlier, in which you need to be a model for others. Even if you experience failure in your startups, even if there were lapses, that's already a good lesson to share to others so they won't experience the same. Most of the startup journeys doesn't need to be like a one-time thing that they became successful overnight. There were challenges, there were lessons that they've gathered, there were things that they'd like to share. So if by all means you experience the same in that journey, share it to others. Share it to other startups. Share it to other entrepreneurs. According to the golden rule, treat others like you would like to be treated, but in our sense, treat others like they want to be treated. Like speak to engineers with details. Speak to business folks with a value proposition and speak to people in their cultural language in order for them to better understand you. Furthermore, you need to be creative in all parts of the business, especially if you are just starting. You need to do self-learning and what we call a tinkering mentality, in which you love to discover how things work. You seek insight, be it from other people, from entrepreneurs who have been there. Understand how to apply the lessons you've learned. Strive for improvement. And this one, you need to be willing to be proven wrong. But should you be wrong, you don't get hurt, but instead you take it wholeheartedly in order to become better. Execution is more important than strategy. Do not just wait for the idea. Why won't you slowly execute your idea? Like, you don't need to wait for X number of times just to have that almost perfect idea. Better to execute it. Timing is everything. This was explained earlier, in which you strive for perfection, but all the while there's another startup that has almost the same solution as yours, but you've waited for the right time and they already have launched and you are too late. Based from the comic strip, an entrepreneur needs to take risks. Even if you forgo your regular salary, you are not sure how much are you getting in the next month, but an entrepreneur needs to take risks with open arms. You need to be also equally willing to accept and, of course, learn from failure. This has been repeated over and over again. So, in the virtue of collaboration and network, these are the 3 H of startup, which I think most of the attendees here know, that you can't be a one-man army to build a startup. Teams are important, and according to Shai Goldman, an almost perfect startup must have these 3 people: a hacker, a hustler, and a hipster. Basically, the hacker is the one with the technical know-how. Like, they know how to build your product. The hustler, on the other hand, would be the person that markets the product, while the hipster is the one that beautifies your product in order to make it more appealing to your consumers. So, in this case, these are some of the things or items under those 3 umbrellas. The hackers are usually your tech guys, your engineers, your data analysts, and they are like the serious ones. We don't mean to like stereotype the hackers, but mostly these are the serious people. Hustlers are the ones that do the operations. They normally are the face of your product because they are the ones who are good with communication. I don't think if they are the boring guy, but yeah, according to the literature, they're usually like the reliable boring guy. Well, the hipsters are the one that's in charge with marketing, with branding, user interface design, and basically the high and stay up guy. So to further explain the 3 H, so these are the hackers, the hipster, and the hustler. So perhaps after this session, you might want to be able to identify within your startup who are the hackers, who are the hipsters, and who are the hustlers. Good example of that perfect team formula is the Apple team. So we have the hustler, who is Steve Jobs, who normally introduced the products, who normally goes on stage with the black turtleneck and the pants and the Levi's pants and introduce the product. We have the hacker, Steve Wozniak, who's normally in charge with creating the product from scratch, and the hipster is we have Sir Johnny Ive, who is known for the design for the iMac, the iPad, and has been Apple's designers for the past 30 years. So, needless to say, we might be able to know Steve Jobs a lot because he is the face, but he has 2 other people working behind him, and those are his hacker and his hipster. That's the first part, which is the entrepreneurial traits and behavior patterns. Should there be questions, do not hesitate to chat those questions in the chat group so that we can answer it later. Finally, we will now be talking about idea generation process. I am most certain you already have your startup ideas, your product ideas, but somehow this will just be a good exercise for you to do after the session in order to really have that mound on if your idea is really feasible to others. So according to Y Combinator, a popular accelerator in the US, make something a lot of people want. So there is what we call as a suggested 4-step process. The first one is that a 4-step process that can help you develop the idea for a product. So how can you be able to now develop an idea for a product or for your startup? One thing that you can do is to identify a point of pain in your target market. Like if you would be the consumer, what are your pain points? Why won't it take like a few minutes and then realize like this should be present because I'm having this difficulty commuting or whatnot. There should be a business that do this one because it's very hard to do this and that. You can also opt to innovate an existing product or a service. Perhaps you are a fan of this product and you have been using this, but they failed miserably in this aspect. So you being a founder, what could you do better? So that would be a good way to innovate a product or service. You can also do a testing of the business model. Like perhaps this existing product has this kind of business model, only tapping this kind of customer segment. Like if you are the owner or the founder, what customer segment would you be tapping that would be totally different from the existing one? And this one, explore how to acquire customers, like going to different customer segments. Like there would be the high end and you would like to have or create a low end one. And how can you be able to do a product that would best fit this kind of customer segment? Step 1 in the 4-step process is this one. You identify a point of pain, but first thing you need to understand, what will be your target market? Are you tapping on people or young professionals aged 20 to 30? Are you looking at mothers or families or children? So after that, identify what point of pain is intended to be addressed. So you need to be able to study their point of pain, their needs, idiosyncrasies, and tailor the offerings to that target market. So having that point of pain, especially if you are the one experiencing it, would already be a good background on how you can be able to do better because you are the consumer that experienced that kind of pain. Good example of point of pain right now, like going to groceries because we have this pandemic. Like how could you, what would be your target market? Like, are you looking at mothers? Are you looking at fathers? Are you looking at young professionals staying alone or whatnot? So after that, what would be their pain points? Like, are they having a hard time because malls are closing so early at 6 o'clock in the evening? Like, what would be a solution that would best fit for that target market? Good case study is the Birchbox case study. The Birchbox is a pioneer of what is known as subscription e-commerce. This is based on the subscription e-commerce is based on registered users receiving what they call as a monthly box of personal care products. So if you try the products, Birchbox will provide you then opportunities to purchase full versions of the products via its website. So basically, they are sending you little samples of personal care products that you can try. So those are just little amounts of, let's say, perfume or lotion or foundation or makeup that you can try for like X number of days. And if you like that makeup, for example, then you can be able to buy the bigger version on their website. So to continue in the second paragraph, the company sends over 400,000 registered users one new box per month at a price of $10 a month. This part of the business model generates revenue, but not much profit. Birchbox founders knew that profitability would only result from converting the users into buyers of the products they were sampling. With that being said, the co-founder, Katia, said, when customers find a product that they love from Birchbox, we try to make it easy for them to shop and then transact. With that, that kind of model slowly begins to work. So this is the interface, the website of Birchbox. One upscale cosmetics brand indicated that there were over 11% of Birchbox users who received a free sample of their product that were then converted into buyers. No wonder more and more makeup companies, cosmetics, and the like are trying to partner with Birchbox because they see an increase in terms of usage if they happen to get a sample of their products before trying out the full version. We can be able to identify these lessons from the Birchbox case study. Birchbox realized their target market's pain points, and those were searching for the right new products because there are already a lot of products in the market, but you don't know what would be the best suitable product for you. And driving to stores is likely time-consuming and prohibitive for some. With that being said, their solution is trying a new product in the comfort of its customer's home by sending a box every month with samples, and further encourage customers to purchase or transact through their online store. And those were their solutions in order to solve the pain points of their target market. Step 2 is you innovating a product or a service. This is both an art and a science and really requires a lot of techniques in innovating, like asking the question, what's bugging you? Be present in your life. Like successful entrepreneurs brainstorm around problems. They just throw in ideas. They just need a sounding board with another person, and from there come up with ideas. I am most certain that there are already a lot of startup founders in which they were able to create their startup because they have been throwing ideas with another person, and there's a light bulb that happened in the midst of their conversation, like, why won't you do this? Why won't you do that? Attack practical problems, like you making a mental or actual note whenever you encounter a customer experience that is frustrating. Like you've heard of the problem over and over and over again. Then you ask yourself whether you can come up with a solution. Like people have been bugging about traffic, about commuting right now. Like what would be the best thing, or how can you best attack this kind of problem in order for it to be solved? And of course, thinking big. Like how can you make the world a better place? Like how can you disrupt this particular industry? Good example of disruptors that have been literally making waves in the startup scene is Canva, for example. So there are a lot of people who don't know designs. Adobe Photoshops have been there, ready for us. But even if that is available, not everyone knows how to maneuver or tinker any of the icons in Photoshop. So here comes Canva. It is a website that you can access online that can help you with design. So even if you have zero art experience at all, you can be able to create a good brochure. You can be able to create a good presentation. And currently they are like the unicorn in the Australia startup scene. Pursue ventures that simplify and improve the lives of many people. And that is where Canva comes in. Because I, for one, personally, I'm not good with design. I don't even know how to tinker with Photoshop. But because of Canva, really, I can make a logo in X number of minutes with no hassles at all. I can make a good brochure, a presentation for my students without even a design atom in my cell or in my body. So literally, it's like heaven sent for me who has zero design experience. Good example of a case of a study that embodies. This one is the Coffee Jewels case study. So just to read, David Jackson wanted to start a business with his friend, Dave. On their mutual interest in face change materials. One morning during their usual routine, Jackson was making a latte for himself. He lamented that it would take 20 minutes to make that perfect latte, but once it was ready, it would be either too hot or too cold to drink. When thinking about how to fix the problem, he realized that phase change materials could be the solution to that. When he called his friend to talk about it, they realized they were onto something. As a result of thinking about this problem, coffee joules were born. Coffee joules are metal beans about the size of ice cubes that are filled with phase change material. So think of them are like an ice cube that you put. When placed in coffee, the joules absorb excess heat to cool your coffee to 140 degrees, which according to them is the ideal temperature to drink your coffee. When the coffee cools below the temperature, the joules release the stored up heat to keep the coffee at a stable temperature for up to 5 hours. So can you imagine that kind of technology that keeps your coffee suitable for you to drink? I mean, wow. So Jackson and Petrillo sought funding for the idea via their Kickstarter and received that much amount, $300,000 in pledges. They combined their passion for working with phase change materials with their everyday experience to generate an idea for a new product. The product would not have merit if Jackson were the only latte drinker in the world. I am sure coffee lovers are also experiencing the same pain point, but they both knew that latte drinkers comprise a large target market opportunity for their product idea. So, implementing the case study that we have, so this is the kind of two-step process that they did. We have their customer discovery by identifying and defining their target market, which is a large sum of latte drinkers, and validating this one is simply introducing their beans to that market because that is their customer discovery part. So the product or service concept will also cycle. Please bear in mind that you need to be able to get the lessons from the first customer validation and pivot, alter, change in order to create a better product in the end. If there is little or no interest from your target market, that usually happens. Why not pivot to a different market or consider a different business model? So these terms might be alien for some, but in the next succeeding sessions, we will be able to discuss further business models, target markets, and how to do better customer validation. So this is what we call as building, measuring, learning feedback loop in order to build your minimum viable product. So in your minimum viable product, that is usually like your first prototype of your product, like something that you can present to your customers in order to get and measure and learn insights in order to create another prototype of that product. So you need, of course, to start with an idea, like come up with the idea, like pain point perhaps that you want to solve, build from there in order to have the product. Then you need to be able to test the product by doing the following under the measure factor. So you do some split testing, you do a beta testing, for example, then you measure how your target market embraced your product. Were they having difficulties? What were their feedback? From there, you gain data in order for you to improve that product of yours. So in a way, this is a cycle that a startup founder or even an entrepreneur usually do in order to come up with a better product over time. So again, start with the idea, build from there. Product, you measure, you have your data, you learn from that data, and you go back, like based from your learning from that data, what were the things that could have been done better, then start and go back to your drawing board and then redo the entire process over again. Step 3 is you need to, of course, test your business model. Business model in a nutshell is how you can be able to make your money. If you have your startup right now, what are the things that tend to bring money to your company? Are you trying to sell it to customers? Are you doing a subscription basis? Are you doing a yearly subscription? Are you doing business to business for that matter? So good examples of business models that are considered free are the social media companies that we normally use, like Facebook and Twitter. Like they have no charge of us posting a new status from time to time, but rather their business model comes from companies that wants wants to market on ads, like they want sponsored contents, like they want to be seen first. In order to do so, businesses and companies need to buy that for Facebook, for example. The Birchbox mini case study that we had earlier, they just do what we call as a subscription business model, but technically they sell goods that is made by other companies. They just tend to put everything together, make a good box out of it, and then deliver it to their registered users. So they can be able to do that on a monthly basis, and that is where their money is coming from. Business models that tech entrepreneurs might use that we can also suggest is, good example is pay as you go, meaning you just get the product and you get the service and then you pay it afterwards. It's very much similar concept in a sari-sari store. You buy something, then you pay for it. Freemium is a mix of the products and services that are free, but if you want to unlock more features in order to have, let's say, a better experience, or if you want to add in more products, then you can pay in order to unlock those. Another business model that you can opt to do is what we call as advertising based, in which you do not charge for the content, but they offer, let's say, a specific banner for you for advertising purposes. Or if you want to be in the very first page of Google search engine, then you need to be able to pay for that space, and that's advertising based. Subscription pricing is paying a fee to gain access to products over a fixed period of time. So Birchbox is a good example for that. We also have Netflix, Spotify, in which we are paying X amount of money every month in order to use those services and websites. We can also do brokering, in which a broker doesn't buy or sell, but they facilitate the transaction between the buyer and seller, and you just get a specific percentage out of the transaction. Good example for that is we have Grab, in which if you book a Grab taxi, the Grab doesn't own the taxi, they are just a broker, so they just get X amount of payment for every transaction. Or Food Panda, for example, like they just get as much as X number of pesos for every transaction because you are using their app in order to have food delivered to you. The fourth step is to explore how you acquire customers. So customer acquisition is considered more involved and, well, expensive simply because you are trying to gain new consumers or new people to buy your product. So announcing the venture's existence and its value proposition is complex and expensive. A good example of a company that tends to do very good with customer acquisition is Apple, because when they launch a specific product, Steve Jobs needs to be on stage and they need a bigger or a wider audience to do that, and they usually couple it with for example, a tech expo, so that they know that the people there are really the ones that would really be getting their products. Putting only a website is actually not enough to generate sales, simply because it's only a one-way stream to market your product. So you need to be able to branch it out, not only on a website, but perhaps a social media arm, like a Facebook arm, a Twitter arm, an Instagram arm, in order to have more avenues for people to discover you, your product, and your company. You need to be able to craft a strategy on how you can acquire customers, how you can serve them, and finally, how can you maintain them? Because acquiring customers can be so easy. A good example is we Cagayannans would love to go to a new restaurant or be the first one in line for a new business that opens up. While that's good, you need to be able to also measure how you can be able to maintain and serve the same customers over and over again. There needs to be some sort of customer loyalty, so there is a guarantee that money is coming to your business even after your launch. If a new venture launch a popular product, there must have adequate supply to meet the demand. That's very, very important, because should there be like higher demand, but you can supply, there's what we call as opportunity loss, and opportunity loss means money lost. And should that happen, your customers will not have trust anymore to your company, simply because when they went there to order, for example, you were not able to deliver it in the first place. Frustrated customers will be lost forever. And of course, negative word of mouth can happen. And even if you already have social media and technology and website to drumbeat your startup or your company, word of mouth is still the best method of marketing. So if you experience that negative word of mouth, then of course, other customers will listen to this individual, and that might mean bad image and reputation for your startup. So these are the resources that were gathered in order to finish this PowerPoint. And if you have some questions, feel free to chat in, or you can unmute yourself should there be concerns. And that's the end of the 2 presentation this afternoon. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, are there questions? None, ma'am. Thank you, Digitech team. So we will be sharing the PowerPoint to you so you can be able to breeze through the PowerPoint slides. No worries, as we will be sending or emailing you copies for that. Anyone? None? Okay, I guess I'm done. But don't worry, should you have questions that you don't want to air out yet, feel free to email us or private message us, or you can post that in our Facebook group, and we will be sure to answer your inquiries in the soonest possible time we can. We will share, yes. We will indeed share. Thank you, Gish. Thank you, team from MedCon. Appreciate that. Thank you, Checkmate. Okay. So, thank you. And for the PowerPoint, yes, no worries. You are more than welcome to have access to this one. So that's it for us from CDO Bytes, I guess. Thank you so much for spending your 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock with us. We're hoping to see you in the future sessions. And other things that would be required from you, there's no assignment yet as of the moment. Okay, that's a breather. No assignment yet, but it would be ideal if you can validate your startup right now. If you haven't done so, you can do some little customer validation via social media perhaps, because post lang po namin. Okay, post lang po kayo sa FB group later. Maraming salamat po. Okay po. So slowly validate your idea right now using the process that we've shared. There's no need for you to give us something like a journal as of the moment. Again, it's a good practice that you do that and implement that um as you start as you start with your idea in order to craft a better product for your target market. Okay po. So thank you so much for attending and have a happy weekend ahead. Maraming salamat.